Hey and welcome to Neverwinter the Aragon. So Cryptic Studios have went ahead and brought back the Tales of Old Artifacts back into the Zen Market. We can jump over to the Events tab and you can see we can purchase the Storyteller Artifact Choice Packs. Now, when you purchase one of these packs, you will only obtain one of the specific artifacts, either the Envenomed, Flayed, Frozen, or Darkened. So if you were to go and wanted all of these artifacts, you'd have to pay a considerable amount of Zen there, totaling up to 6,000 Zen just for all 4 artifacts. But do you need these artifacts, and are they even worth it to purchase? Well, for most players, no. This price tag is just obscenely high for just a casual player, because an artifact gives you very little benefit in terms of the overall scheme of things compared to companions, mounts, gear, etc. So I really don't recommend purchasing these artifacts for that insane amount of pricing if you're a casual to mid-game player. However, if you're approaching endgame and you want to be min-maxed, these storyteller journals are very valuable, especially for a DPS build and also a tank build. As a DPS build, these artifacts, if you have 3 of them, you will basically get the bonus that the Lost Mouth set will give you, the Lost Mouth Vengeance, where you will deal an additional hit for your weapon damage on a critical hit. Now, I've went and made a video on it just recently on the Lost Mouth set itself, so you could go back and watch that if you wished to get more details on how this actually works. But basically, the essence is that whenever you critically hit, you will deal an additional hit for your item level divided by 10, and then depending if you're a DPS or a tank or a healer, you'll get extra there. Tanks get 0 extra, DPS will get 20% extra, and healers will only get 10% extra. So as a tank here with no extra, you can see it's literally my item level divided by 10. So this is how much damage I will deal extra whenever I critically hit. And it makes this set of these artifacts really good. On top of that, having the Envenomed Storyteller with the tails, you can see when you have all the tails there, it will, let's hover over the mythic one there, it will give you the benefit of giving you action points every second for 15 seconds. This will give you a total of, I believe it's 35% of your action points, which is a significant amount. Along with that, it will also increase your damage by 5% for that period of time of, I believe it's 15 seconds. So if you were to go and wanted to get these 3 books, they're really good for a DPS for that extra hit. Now, when I say really good, we're talking about end game, where you're talking about like 2 or 3% more overall damage on your character, and in an AoE environment this is even more because you're hitting more targets. Now, in order to obtain 3 of these artifacts, what I do recommend if you were to get them is indeed that Envenomed, the Flayed, and the Frozen. However, you could also go and obtain the Darkened one instead. The Darkened one will give you power and forte as some offense statistics, and comparably to, let's say, the Frozen enchantment, which will only give you power and critical severity. It doesn't particularly matter, but what I like about using the Frozen instead of the Darkened is that essentially the Frozen also has a nice buff there where you'll increase the damage of your allies for 10%, but you won't gain the buff that the Envenomed has for giving you the action points. Now, when you go and purchase them on the event store here, depending on whether you have the tails for the artifacts or not, it will either display them or not. But when you purchase them and open this pack, you won't get any tails. You'll have to go to the actual Wondrous Bazaar here, go to special items, and here is where you'll be able to purchase all of the tails. And they're pretty much another insane amount there at 200,000 base value per tail. So if you were to go the cheapest route, you would get 3 of these books. It's either 3 of these books or none. I wouldn't bother getting the books if you're not going to get all 3. And then you would get the 2 tails for the Envenomed. You'd get the one that would increase your damage, and you'd get the one that would increase your action points. Now ideally you'd get all the tails because they are pretty decent, giving you that extra damage over time, the stun, and things like that. But it's not going to be as impactful as just increasing your damage and your action points, because then you can use this Envenomed as your primary artifact, which is pretty decent, and I like to run it in solo content a lot, and even in most content it's good for its stun ability and action points. Who doesn't like more daily powers? They always come in handy. Now as a tank, when I go and switch to my tank build, I have this setup here. Now you can also go and use 4 books. Now the benefit of running them as a tank is that they give you additional hit points. They actually give you more hit points through their set bonus than the normal ordinary artifacts, the ones that are on higher item level. For example, the erratic drift globe. You can see it's only giving me there 1350. Of course this will be scaled with other hit point bonuses, but if we look at these actual storyteller journals, you can see it will give me, for each book I have above 1, it will give me an extra 5000 hit points along with a 0.5% additional power. Now stacking up additional percentage power is generally pretty easy for DPS, but this will help. And as for a tank, that's just going to give a little bit more aggro, and it's mainly as a tank what you want to be gaining is that hit points. They're really good for that extra survivability. So again, would I buy these books? Well, if you're on a endgame build and you don't have these books and you want to be competitive in endgame, you don't necessarily need the books whatsoever. As a DPS character, you might want to get them so that you deal a little bit more damage than your mate, but that aside, there's really not going to make much of a difference. But if you want to be min-maxed, then yes, as a DPS you want these books, and as a tank you want these books. However, you can complete all content without the books just fine. So with that said, the price on these, I'll tell you, is just insane. You will be able to purchase them for Astral Diamonds from the actual auction house here from other players. Keep in mind you won't get the tails, so if you purchase the books at a later date when the tails aren't available in the Wondrous Bazaar anymore, you won't be able to access the tails, and it's kind of pointless to purchase the artifacts unless you're like a tank where you can use them all as secondary artifacts and you can use your primary for whatever you need. So with that being said, hopefully this was at least somewhat helpful and that you may save your Zen if you don't need to be spending it. So hopefully I presented this well. If I did, consider leaving the video a like, and if you're new around here, consider subscribing, and we'll see you guys around. Goodbye for now.